Good day, everyone. My name is Ng Jia Jung with meeting number 27662. So I'm from Grade 8, and our study title is the factors affecting students' cost of living in University Utara, Malaysia. Okay, so these are my group members: Lim Chi Sim, Inzanato Nadia, Ija Nisa, and also Noor Amni Akila.
In our research, we have raised the issue of inflation and cost of living. Inflation can be referred as overall increase in price or even increase in the cost of living. It is measured using the Consumer Price Index (CPI), which is the cost determined for basket items. Theoretically, inflation and cost of living is directly related. According to statistics in Malaysia context, inflation in 2022 is 3.3%, which is higher than 2.5% in 2021. While in 2019, Malaysian cost of living is 4,534 ringgit. Our problem statement is university students are being impacted by the issue of rising cost of living as well. Allocations of cost of living in their study loans is insufficient for them to support their expenses in university.
So for our research, we have 4 research questions. The first one is how spending in transportation affect the cost of living among UUM students. The second one is what is the spending pattern of UUM students with different lifestyle. The third one is does the allowance affect the cost of living among UUM students, and the last one is does the changes in weather affect the cost of living among UUM students. Then we have research objective to answer the question that we have in this research. The first objective is to analyze the effect of transportations on cost of living among UUM students. The second one is to explore the spending pattern of UUM students with different lifestyle. The third one is to identify if allowance difference can affect the cost of living among UUM students by using the method regression analysis. The last one is to describe how changes of weather can affect the cost of living among UUM students.
So next, I'm going to present about the research framework, which is we using the theoretical framework and also the conceptual framework. So in our study, we aim to examine the dependent variable, which is the cost of living, and also the independent variables such as the transportation, lifestyle, weather, and allowance. Okay, so next I will discuss about the research design for our study, which is on the factors affecting the cost of living in UUM. Is focused on a quantitative research approach. So we utilize a survey based on the questionnaire using the Google Forms to collect the data on the spending patterns of UUM students. So next is a hypothesis testing. We also use to examine the relationship between the cost of living and also the independent variables such as the transportation, lifestyle, weather, and allowance. The last one is the descriptive analysis and also the model regression analysis will be used to analyze the collected data. So these methods will help to determine if there is a relationship and significant effect between the dependent variable cost of living and the dependent variables. Okay, so next I will discuss about the population, sample, and unit of analysis. So for our study, the target population consists of individuals aged 18 years and above. And the next is the sample size, which refers to the number of items included, and a representative sample of 200 respondents is deemed sufficient for our study. And the next is sampling design. So for our study, cluster random sampling is chosen, which divides the population into distinct and diverse clusters. And the last one is the data collection procedure. So for our study, the quantitative research is conducted using questionnaires and researcher observations. So the questionnaire survey is the primarily data source and conducted using the Google Forms and distributed through the digital platforms. So the questionnaire consists of closed-ended questions, and the questionnaire is then distributed to 300 UUM students from different industries, routes, and also outside campus with a completion time of 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, next is about the model specification. So our study utilized multiple linear regression through the ordinary least squares, which we call the OLS method, to analyze the factors affecting the cost of living among the UUM students. So the regression model includes the cost of living as the dependent variable and four independent variables, which are transportation, lifestyle, income, and weather. So the functional model chosen for our study is the log linear mod, which allow us to compute the percentage change in the cost of living as the independent variables change by 1 unit. So the regression function is specified as follows, which is the natural logarithm of the cost of living is equal to the intercept beta 0 plus the coefficients beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, beta 4 multiplied by their respective independent variables and an error term which is u hat accounts for other factors affecting the dependent variable. Next is about the methods of data analysis, which for the first one is the descriptive analysis. It was used in our study to investigate the frequency and proportion of the respondents' demographic information, such as the gender, age, and income. And the second one is the regression analysis. So we use the multiple regression for our study. So for the equation is represented as the cost of living equal to beta 0 plus the beta 1 x1 plus beta 2 x2 plus beta 3 x3 plus beta 4 x4 and also plus mu, where the beta coefficient represented the strength and direction of the relationships. So through the regression analysis, we can estimate the coefficients and understand how the independent variables influence the cost of living. So for our example, the coefficients indicate the change in the cost of living for each unit increase in the independent variables. So positive coefficients indicate a positive relationship, while negative coefficients indicate a negative relationship.
So proceed with data analysis. Descriptive analysis is being applied on demographic respondents, including gender, age, race, college, school, year of study, INASIS, and their income source. Based on data collected from 200 respondents, 139 of them is female. Our respondents mainly in the age range of 22 to 25 years old. Malay respondents accounted 117 of the total. Most of the respondents are students from College of Business, which is COB. We'll continue on demographic respondents for school. 3 schools with highest frequency are presented here, consist of SEFB, SBM, SEML, and SMMTC. Among 200 respondents, majority of them is third-year university student. More than 25% of respondents stay at Laluan B. Last but not least, for income source, income for more than 50% of respondents is sourced from PTPTN.
So next, proceed with our second method in data analysis with its multiple regression. So multiple regression analysis is a statistical method used to explore the relationship between dependent variables and multiple independent variables. So it allows us to understand how change in the independent variables are associated with change in dependent variables. So the purpose of our analysis and the variables involved is to conduct a multiple regression analysis to examine the factor affecting student cost of living in UUM. So that the dependent variables would be the cost of living, and the independent variables include factors like transportations, lifestyle, allowance, and weather. So based on the model summary, looking at the R-square value in the tables, so R-square is a goodness of fit measure for linear regression models. So this statistic indicate the percentage of the variance in the dependent variables that the independent variables explain collectively. So R-square measure the strength of the relationship between the model and the dependent variables on the convenience 0 to 100% scale. So in this area, our R-square value are bound to be lower than 50%, which is only 44% of the R-square value. So because we are using the primary data, it can still say to be significant if the R-square value is a little bit lower than 50%. So this is because our study that try to explain human behavior in cost of living generally have R-square value less than 50%, because people behavior usually is just harder to predict than things like physical process.
So referring to the literature review also, we assume that our R square is significant even though below than 50%. So net is our F value. So in statistical analysis, a significant F value is the result of a statistical test used in ANOVA in multiple regressions. So the F test is used to determine whether there is a significant difference between group or a significant relationship between variables in a model. So in the content of regression analysis, if the F value is less than 0.05, which is our value is 0.01, it indicate that at least one independent variables in the model significantly contribute to the dependent variables. So in generally, a very low F value suggests that we have strong evidence to reject the null hypothesis and accept that there are a significant difference or relationship in our data. So that's all. I will pass to other presenter.
So for this study, we have encountered some limitation. The first one is lack of previous research study for the relationship of weather and cost of living. Weather is our gap of study and it has lack of research. Literature review is important in research because it helps to identify the scope of work that had been done so far in the research area. This limitation caused us to have little foundation of knowledge on the topic weather. The second one is limited distribution of research. We have distributed the online survey via Google Form among UUM students through various online platforms such as WhatsApp, Telegram, and more. However, many choose to ignore it, causing only a small portion of the sample size respond. This could cause the result to be contaminated by respondent bias and not accurate. The last one is time constraint. This research also has time constraint as it needs to submit within the deadline. Thus, we don't have enough respondent for this research as we have limited time to collect data. This causes it hard to make conclusion for the finding as we are unable to achieve 379 respondents.
Moving on to recommendation part, our recommendation to improve our next research project is we are suggested to do more research about weather situation that can affect students' cost of living. This is because weather somehow is not really related to cost of living, makes it difficult to find data about how weather can affect students' cost of living. Okay, next we suggest that we should expand our research target. This means that we are not collecting data only from UUM students, but instead we encourage ourselves to collect more data from various universities from the same state or even in a bigger scale so that we can have a different population to come up with a unique sampling data set. The third recommendation is to improve time management. This is also an important aspect in doing research project. Our group lack of time management, so we sometimes stuck in the middle while doing the research, especially during the findings part. So we suggest that we should improve our time management skills as it provides more flexibility while doing research. In conclusion, based on our findings on this research project about cost of living amongst UUM students, we found that there are relationships between the cost of living and the factors that affecting students' cost of living. As we can see in the problem statement, most of the students are being impacted by the rising in cost of living. And then the findings that we conduct are descriptive and regression analysis, which shows that from the sampling, we do come up with the significant values of our research. Furthermore, our limitation and recommendation also being discussed in our research, as it is a need to find what is our group's pros and cons while doing this research.